Let's go to the page that says the aftermath. And I wrote this up so it's very basic and definitions and things like that, but God said when I was doing this, was telling Karen that this is going to evolve. So it's going to evolve today because everybody's experience is going to be different. Okay? So I was thinking this morning, I was praying and I was asking God, okay, let me go back to when I first started to experience the aftermath. And what happened was after the last meeting, okay, with the whole thing about us coming and putting ourselves on the altar, putting everything on the altar, well, that's what I was doing. Okay, so I was seeing myself putting all these different aspects and things of myself on the altar. And then I started to feel absolutely awful. Okay, and I didn't know what was going on. Feeling terrible. So I think that lasted probably 4 or 5 days. And then I had a situation, it was with you, Sam, where I think it was your first day of getting ready to go to your new job and trying to figure out how to get him out of the house on time so he could be there. And I found myself really upset, okay, and upset inside myself. And then I was also feeling this whole thing of, like, nothing that I do seems to turn out right. And if I don't do the right thing, then I feel like I failed. And I started feeling like I failed as a mother. You know, like, what did I do wrong here that he has these issues and blah, 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 okay. So what I ended up feeling like on the next day, well, that was a Friday, next day, Saturday, I felt like I had just come through a war. I was exhausted, mentally fatigued. I felt like I had been through hell. I mean, that's how I felt. So I was like, wow, this feels like what it must feel like after you've fought in a war and you've come out of a battle. And they call that the aftermath. Okay? But then I was identifying it as, this feels like anything that I have remembered in my life that I've experienced as traumatizing. So what happened with him was not what I was experiencing. So I knew that it was something different. So then I thought about other times that I was started to feel like that. But this was even more profound. I mean, just the emotion of it all. And all of a sudden I began to, in this aftermath, I realized that I just didn't care so much about what was going on with everybody else that day. Okay, so when Sam has stuff going on or David has stuff going on, I was like, okay. And all of a sudden I heard God say, you're in your neutral zone. And I said, hey, I like it here. Because everything else could just would have, if the world would have exploded, I wouldn't have cared at that point. It's like, you know, something happened, okay. Deal with it, but don't get absorbed in it, don't get affected by it. And it just happened. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. So then I just allowed myself, then I told you about it on Tuesday, and then you began to experience the neutral zone. So I want to talk to you about aftermath and what it looks, you know, what it is, what it looks like, what it might feel like. Okay? So if you look on your page and the definition, the aftermath is something that results or follows from an event, especially one of disastrous or unfortunate nature or consequence. The period immediately following a ruinous event, the period of time after a bad or usually destructive event. So when you think of the aftermath, I mean, what comes to your mind?
War or earthquake.
Okay.
Like after the earthquake doesn't last that long.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, all the buildings,
Devastation.
On top of each other, people trapped.
Okay.
No water, no, you know, just this huge mess for a long time.
Right, right.
Like a tornado.
Tornado.
Yeah.
I'm thinking after the death of a loved one.
Okay. If you think of a more bigger global first, then we're going to go more into the micro. But Hurricane Katrina was a big one. Okay, there's a lot of earthquakes overseas and stuff that we don't really experience here.
Yeah, what
But-
about tsunami?
A tsunami, okay? And so what do you imagine you would see afterwards? You just described with an earthquake. What else, what would you see after Hurricane Katrina? What did we see? What did we see after a tsunami? What did we see after all these things?
We saw floods,
Okay.
we saw people stricken with grief,
Mhm,
we saw anger,
mhm.
and we saw
Dead
love,
bodies,
Destruction.
And
destruction, property.
yeah, destruction. all over the
Okay.
place.
Now, once that destruction is cleaned up, is it over? Is the aftermath over? What about the survivors?
Yeah, there's all kinds of emotional upheavals and
They know people that were killed or drowned
Right.
or,
What
Plus,
about?
you don't have a house, I mean, you don't have a
Right.
house,
yeah,
you don't have, you know,
They're still rebuilding
they lost
from
all-
Katrina.
They could have lost everything that they owned, so they had nothing to go back to.
What about the country or the state or, you know, as far as looking at bigger, like Louisiana, the state of Louisiana? Financially, they were affected, okay? And a lot of their residents had to get up and leave and go to other places, okay? So they had to relocate. So it doesn't, what was there before will never be the same. Okay, so I'm trying to make that point that what happens before the event, it changes whatever it is. So it changes the state, it changes the people, it changes everything, and it's never going to be like it was before. So if you have a hurricane or a tornado, you can rebuild, but is it the same house? No. Okay. Say, oh, well, that it wasn't like that before the tornado, or it wasn't like that before the hurricane, it wasn't like that before the tsunami.
So, and there's good things that happen too.
Okay,
It's like-
hold on. I'm getting ahead of me. Okay? So, what about the aftermath in you? We're going to go micro now. Okay, so if you're looking at, let's start with these events. If it was you that was in that event, okay, and you came out, did you have post-traumatic stress? Yes. Devastating event. What if you lost your whole family and you're the only one left?
Devastating.
Right. What if you lost everything, but you still have your family? You still lost everything. You have nothing. You have to start over. Okay. You're talking about a death of a loved one. That can be very traumatic. Okay. Okay. So if you go to yourself now, if you lost someone, let's say a child lost a parent or lost both parents, they could develop parts of them. They could develop post-traumatic. They could have a lot of problems because they didn't have their parents. Okay. So even in us, what about trauma? Abuse.
right, so you're saying there's an event, just like there's a tornado, there's sexual abuse, just like there's an earthquake,
There's
there's
an event.
verbal
Yeah.
abuse, there's an event that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this, I'm talking about the aftermath being more about traumatic events or things that really left a mark on you, not just parts that developed because of conclusions we made or something like that. These are actual events that happened to you, is your aftermath. Okay. Like Dee with her first grade experience, that was traumatic for her. Okay, so that for her is something that she's going to feel afterwards and has felt it for years. Okay, my sexual abuse, your sexual abuse, verbal abuse, being put under traumatic events. The aftermath is actually your outcome or the result. Okay, so it's how you feel afterwards, the state that you're in, and guess what? You're not going to be like you were before it happened. Right? So with each time, or if it happened once, just like with a hurricane or tornado or an earthquake, it's never the same. It won't be like that before. Can you be healed? Yes. Are you going to be like you were if it didn't happen? No. It changes. So,
It could be better.
yes, it could be better. Thank you.
That's God, it's like God. It's better than That's what I was experiencing. You're gonna end up better than you would if it never happened, because that's God.
Right. Okay, and the other thing is, the aftermath is the period that follows an unpleasant event or accident and the effect that it causes. So it's a time period, but it's also the effects. The aftermath is that awful, awful, awful feelings afterwards that you have. After physical abuse, beatings, sexual abuse, violation, verbal abuse, the moments after and the days after, what that feels like and what the experience is. And you have to take in mind too that if you've dissociated, you're still going to have emotion, you're still going to have feelings, whether it's a cover-up and that didn't happen, or if you actually remember it. Okay, because as you get older, you do remember. There's some things you remember and some things you don't remember.
Especially the effect of it is really important.
Yes, it's the effect. Because it doesn't last for a week or a month, it lasts for years and years and years, right? Okay. Now, we have parts of us that have been rescued that know about the events, but God was showing me that when I started to feel this, it was because of something that just happened. Okay, so what happened with Sam, I was feeling something, it triggered. This is what it must have been like for me after I was sexually abused. After I was abused, this is what I felt. I felt awful. I can't even tell you how bad I felt. I felt like my world was ending. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to suffer this pain anymore. But it was real to me. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, if I'm feeling this now, what about all these past years now that I've had all these parts of me rescued? Why wasn't I feeling it then?
Right. So you're talking about the day after an event,
The day after, or the
Abuse.
week after.
the day, the week, the days following, that's your aftermath.
So God was starting to show me that we all have those, but it's kind of like your aftermath goes away with the parts of you. So you don't know what that is. And I remember going through a breakup, feeling the same thing that I was feeling on that day. Going, why was I feeling like that? There was nothing happening except we were ending a relationship. And I'm like, but I felt like I had been through a traumatic event. And I felt awful. So guess what? I tried everything in my life to try to not have to feel that again. I don't want to have to feel that again. So then you end up staying in bad relationships. You do different things because you don't want to have to experience that aftermath, because that feels terrible. Okay. I see wheels turning. What you thinking?
Whole bunch of stuff. So if you're asking me for something in particular, I'm sort of, thinking, seeing my whole life flash ahead of me. It was behind me, but all of it flashed. And I'm thinking of the kind of things that I suffered because of of what happened.
Yes.
And that makes me feel angry and makes me feel sad and makes me feel regrets, and it just, it's like so much of my life was taken away from me, and it makes me angry.
So you have multiple aftermaths. Okay.
Yeah.
I have multiple. Karen has multiple. She had a lot of events happen to you through your whole life, not just certain times. So the next thing is that, which was really cool about God, and God is very cool, is even though I was feeling that aftermath, he almost instantly took me over into the neutral zone so that I could handle it. Okay, so this is the lead-in. I think I had written on here, what do you think of when you think aftermath? You just gave us some idea there. And this one is for you. For the next one, you don't have to fill it out today, is what is your aftermath? If you don't know, what do you imagine it to be? So you were already imagining what that must be like for you. What's your aftermath?
Yeah, so what aftermath are we talking about?
Well, you can think of different things that happened to you. If you know and remember something that happened, like abuse, what do you think that 7-year-old felt like the day after? What do you think she felt like that night? What do you think she felt like the week after? Because you don't remember that necessarily unless God brings it up and brings it to the surface. You're not going to remember that, what that felt like.
Right.
Well, one thing that made me feel for the rest of my life was that I could not trust my dad.
Okay, so that's part of your aftermath.
We were talking yesterday and helped me to understand it. For me, okay, so sexual abuse from my stepfather at night, the next, and so all the parts have been rescued from that. So you think that's the whole thing. Like Sharon's saying, the next day, what did that feel like? And what did there was another trauma that happened because I had to cover it up and I had to
Yes.
forget about it and I had to clean up. I had to act different. You acting one way, he's acting one way at night. The next morning at breakfast, he's acting a different way. I have to adjust. That's a secondary trauma. That's a second trauma
Yes.
that happens. And we can't, and what God is saying is don't. Now he's going there. And I was like, oh my gosh, as I started
Yes.
realizing it. So it took me a while to get
Mhm.
it, as Sherry was explaining it to me. But really when I thought of it as a second trauma, it's different in nature, but I still had to do, what do we do in traumas to survive? So I had to survive. So what did I do to survive is to cover it up. I wasn't doing it consciously,
Yeah.
but more parts of me came and they were the cleanup crew.
And there's a lot of parts of us in the cover-up. Okay, if you've been abused, there's a lot of cover-up parts. Okay, but the thing is, what Karen's bringing up is that you have that initial trauma, you have an aftermath, and in your aftermath, there's a secondary trauma. Well, guess what? Is it over? Okay, if there's a tornado, when the tornado's done, you're done. Abuse, that doesn't happen. It usually happens again and again and again and again. Now, sometimes it can happen one time. But if you have, like with me, you Karen, and the church and things like that, you with your dad and then you with your stepdad, is that the person keeps coming back. Or the people keep coming back, or you're getting in those situations. So if that's happening, well then, guess what? Then you gotta go to the next one. And you have another aftermath, and you got another secondary,
Yeah, but I'm saying that the aftermath itself, even if it was one time, that's a separate trauma.
Oh, yeah.
Because now you're handed this, and you're supposed to now survive, figure out what to do with it. So even if it was just one-time event, you're supposed to figure out what to do.
Right, and that's what I was saying, in that secondary trauma, I think that in our minds, we're thinking, what if this happens again? You know, you still have to deal with what's happening there at that moment and surviving
You have
it.
to prepare for the next one.
But
There's a lot
you
there.
both lived with your perpetrator. Okay? So how do you get out of that? You don't get away from it. You have to be prepared. So in that aftermath, you're dealing with everything, and still, I think in some way you're preparing for the next.
I didn't write about that, that's good.
Okay, so what I wrote was the actual trauma. Okay? And this is what we saw before. We saw trauma, parts form, God come in, rescue the parts, right? Well, look at all the things that he's opened up now. Is that trauma, you have parts of form, aftermath, there's parts in the aftermath. Then you got survival, the secondary trauma, which you talked about, Karen, the next day or the next week. I think you can develop parts along that depending on what's coming up, what are you remembering, you can develop. So it's not only just the next day, but it could be the day after that, the week after that, the month after that. Okay, and on and on. Then you got cover up and clean up
Parts.
and parts, and the nothing happened group. Look at all those parts. Okay? But the wonderful thing, thank you God, for who he is, knows this is happening. Okay? And so then he brings in this wonderful thing we call the NZ, which is your neutral zone. This is what I experienced. Okay, so I kind of see it as, if I can draw it on here, it's kind of like this. Encapsulated everything. Reminds me of the big space, or the large space, kind of drawn the same way. So, God brought all of me into this zone, neutral zone. What happens if you look on your paper, the neutral zone? Let's define it first. neutral. Neutral is defined as this is one of the definitions, which I don't agree with, a state of no activity or development. Okay? They can be that way, some neutral. Having features or characteristics that are not easily noticed. Not taking part or giving assistance in a dispute or war between others. So I'm just taking these out of the dictionary. Not aligned with or supporting any side or position in a controversy. It's like I'm the neutral party in this, right? Just like what they do with mediators. They're neutral parties. Of or belonging to a neutral state or party. Of no particular kind, characteristic, etc., indefinite. Not causing or reflecting a change in something. Being neutral. Okay, you'll flip the page. Then I gave you the one for machinery. The position or state of disengaged gears or other interconnecting parts, being neutral. Okay, so those are definitions, but they don't really define what our neutral is. So what do you think of, if you're in a neutral zone, Mom just said maybe it's where you don't feel anything. What do you think if God says, I'm going to put you, you're in the midst of this, I'm going to put you in a neutral zone?
It's a safe zone.
Perfect.
State?
Safe.
Zone.
Being in neutral is being safe.
Uh,
And that's the large space too, is it's a safe place, right? I was really seeing a lot of similarities between the large space and the neutral zone. So I'm not sure if they're the same thing, or if it's just an extension or expansion of the large space. But in the neutral zone, it's the main thing here is that it's safe. Okay, so you're safe.
It's like
Okay,
a safe house.
Exactly. When the parts of you are coming forth, before they would affect those around you. But in the neutral zone, it keeps it from happening. So, example, if I have parts of me that are coming forth that are really angry, I may express that anger towards everyone that's around me for those couple of days or whatever until those parts get free. In the neutral zone, that's not happening to me. I don't think that's happening to you, right? It's actually, you're in that safe place and everything that's happening, the anger and all that, is happening inside there, in the neutral zone. This is what's really cool about the neutral zone.
it's happening in the neutral zone?
It's happening in the
All that
neutral
anger
zone.
and stuff? But you said you didn't feel anything in the neutral
No,
zone.
you said
Oh,
that.
no, you said that.
And you feel everything in it.
You
but-
feel everything in the
But you
neutral
feel really
zone.
calm.
Oh, I thought that's when you said you didn't.
That's
care
the
about-
aftermath. No, in the neutral zone, I didn't, when there were things that were happening, see, this was what triggered me was I felt like I had to do something. Okay, so then I felt like a failure. Well, this was my pattern, is if I don't do everything right, then I'm going to, really, it's going to come back and slap me in the face. And then that means I failed because it didn't turn out right. Okay, so in the neutral zone, my neutral zone in that day was, Sam could have been late to work and lost a job. Dave could something, whatever. He'd be really angry with me or whatever, and I've been,
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
that's the way it is.
You're
Yep.
witness.
Kind of like, okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I was still angry, right?
Yeah.
And I expressed myself and I told her, I said, don't try to fix this. I'm good. But I had to have somewhere to put it. And I could have done that and stood there and yelled at the wall. It would have been would have been similar. I was glad you were there. But if I stood there and yelled at the wall and got my feelings and expressions out, I would have been able to get them out. Okay, I don't know if I would have been able to do that before. That I could just express my anger, sort of like to the air. This is what I'm finding myself do. I'm saying things out loud now, which I wouldn't say before, because I couldn't say it. Okay, but that was my trigger, was because I had to fix things. Always having to fix, and have to keep it from happening, keeping something bad from happening.
So that goes back to the definition on the first page of neutral being not taking part or giving assistance in a dispute or war between others.
Yes.
So you were disengaging from what was going on with Sam. You weren't participating in it. And so that's what the freedom is and the safety is and the not feeling that I'm not connected with you because now you're making me angry or I'm angry at you. It's like this disengage. I'm in my neutral zone. I still see you. It's not like I've done this and dissociating, like, oh, this isn't happening. It's like, oh, that's happening, but that's over there.
Yeah.
I'm not fixing her or him. I'm here. I'm
It's
in my
like you
space.
disengage from it, but you're still present, you're still in the relationship, you're still doing, but it's like your emotions or something, they just, I don't even know how to
Well, remember
explain
when I
it.
first went in a minute, when you have when you get done with your thing, I might jump up and, because my experience was different.
Yes, it was,
And so to just give that perspective.
depending on what
But
the
it was
trigger
that, it
is,
was
yeah,
that disengagement that I had to do first, when I
Yeah.
first went to the neutral zone.
that's right, yeah.
So in other words, you were really engaged in all this responsibility, you took you felt that you were
Yes.
responsible for everything. And then
On
finally.
that day, because I'm not always like that. But that in that particular day, because this was something new for him, and this has been a pattern in him because of his disability, then mom has to jump up and has to make it happen because he can't. And
Okay.
then I feel like I failed somehow along his growing up because I didn't know about his disability, and then so now I have to help, and then I didn't do the right thing, and therefore now I'm a failure, and blah blah blah. Okay.
Yeah, and with me, it was different, and maybe with Kieran, it was different too. All my life, I felt responsible for everything that was going on around me. I think a lot of times that comes from abuse. You
Right.
feel responsible.
Oh yeah.
She had abuse.
And so when you find, and I find that God's been healing me from this, because I no longer have to take the responsibility
Right.
for Deanna or for anybody else.
In
And
your
you're-
neutral zone, you're gonna love it, because
Yeah.
then you really feel free from letting her, and then that helps her grow, because when she's on her own with God, and we're not attached in a weird way. That's what I experienced
And-
with Timothy.
Right.
Hold me back from being like this.
And she's talking from what she knows up until now, but when you go in the neutral zone, it will be different. Okay, so that's what we're trying to describe to you. And so when then that happened to me, then I felt my aftermath. And I too had to do the same thing, but what happened with me, the trauma, it triggered, so I automatically disengaged. Instead of have to consciously think about it, I had already disengaged, and then God said, you're in your neutral zone. And so at that point, I was like, okay, well, these things are now happening, and I think Sam said a couple of things to me like, Mom, I need this, and I'm like, take care of it yourself. You know, that was kind of I was just done. It was kind of that, I'm done here, and you do it yourself, you know, instead of me doing it. But that was my personal experience. Everybody's going to be different. Okay, so when you go in your neutral zone for the first time, you're going to have a different experience. Okay.
But I think disengagement, or hear from
Yeah,
what
that's
you're
part of
saying,
that.
that I'm saying, and disengagement from those around you and circumstances. That's part of it. It's wonderful.
Right, and that was one of the other keys that we talked about yesterday, was that you can walk out of your neutral zone in the beginning. You can until it starts to expand out. But when it first happening and you go, okay, well, I feel disengaged, but I'm going to go do this anyway, because you can make a choice. Okay, I'm going to go get in his business anyway. Okay, and I have to keep telling
Or you
myself.
forget, like I would forget about the neutral zone, and I would act my old way. And then I was like, oh no, I'm getting in my neutral zone.
Yes.
To me, it looked like a strong tower, like a cylinder. And the name of the Lord is a strong tower, the righteous run into it and they'll be saved. So I would run into my strong tower,
Right.
and I just stay there.
Right. Yep. Okay, so I already see you in the neutral zone. Okay, but here in the neutral zone is a safe place for you to be all of you. So now I see all of you not wanting to be responsible or having to be responsible, and so all these things are being pulled apart here. Okay, well, I couldn't do that. Well, yeah, now you can. Now it's a choice to not do that. Well, what does God say about that? What does the Christian culture say about that? Well, now my family's involved. You can pull all of that stuff apart in the neutral zone. Okay, so that's not even just about the other people on the outside and you not being engaged with them. Okay, this is all about you too being able to be there with God and getting this stuff pulled apart. I'm really seeing this key, this is really, because I knew this would develop, okay, is that The neutral zone is a place that's safe. Okay, so this is it. You're in your safe zone. And now you have disengaged from everybody else.
Right.
Okay. 2 key
Oh,
points.
it's me. Right. Thank you. I have to squeeze down.
You want
to get
that
this
color?
picture. Sure. Because what I experienced is, okay, because that definition, don't go away, I'm not gonna be here long, but I have to squeeze
I was
down
just
to
going to
get
go
me.
around the camera.
Okay, but what's that definition that says neutral is not being on, in a wartime, if two countries are fighting, to be a neutral country is not to be on either side, right? So, when I first went into neutral zone, this one right here was Timothy, right? And I was like, what am I and I was in between, I was getting in the neutral zone, because I wasn't going to get engaged with what he was saying. He wasn't being horrible, he was just being himself, whatever. The things that used to upset me that he'd say. I'm like, oh, I'm in my neutral zone. These are things that are not upsetting me anymore. But I was thinking, what are the two parties here? And then I realized that this one was my husband, and this one was parts of me. The parts of me were very upset with what he was saying. But in my neutral zone, the rest of me got in the neutral zone, and I would neither side with him, or I wouldn't side with the parts.
That's good.
Right? So that's so
really
cool,
good.
right?
Yeah.
So that helped me because I was thinking, well, who was the other party?
Right, right.
There's only one other person. So if you guys live together, you get upset, well, she's the other person. The other party is your parts. They're upset with her or something, or even the responsibility thing.
They're always upset with me.
So yeah, you need Mama to get in your neutral zone. You get in your neutral zone, then her parts that are upset with you, you're not going to feel them, and then you can, and your parts of you. So it might be, you know what this is really, this is the parts of him. Because his parts will speak up. And you know how that goes. Then you get mad. Well, it's really the parts of me and the parts of him. So I'm in the middle. Guess what happened? Without me doing anything, all this cleared up because God said to both of us, get in a neutral zone, that there's going to be changes with David, your husband, with my husband, with you living with Sam, so with everybody who's close around you. God's going to go and help work on them.
Yes.
Not like they have to be fixed and you don't. You're getting fixed in here.
Yes.
They're getting fixed out here, and it's no longer that you're right next to each other, engaged
In your
like this,
space. Yeah.
overlapped or in your space. So this is freaking awesome. Because what comes, there's so much peace here. And it comes, and it was coming to here. I knew it affected him because I wasn't the same.
You don't respond the
I
same
wasn't
way.
responding the same. Since I'm up here, I'll say what happened to me first. And I didn't see it like a shape like this. I'll do a different color. My shape. I'm trying to bend down because I'm taller than Sherry. Probably just see
Hey,
it like
have
this.
heels on.
But whatever. Yeah, I have my slippers on. But we won't worry about it. I saw my land like this. This is me. And when Sherry first told me about it, I saw the neutral zone like a cylinder. It's hard to draw sideways. It was like a cylinder, like a plexiglass. And I went in there. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. It felt like a strong tower to me. Because I was like, okay, Sherry told me about the neutral zone. I'm going to run in there now. Because I would feel like blah, 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 blah out here. And then I said, no, I'm going to my neutral zone. So it first started for me to be a place that I would run to. Okay, and then in these days, God has expanded it. So just the other day, I saw it expanding to the very borders of me, which is, again,
That's where you want it.
freaking awesome. And now as my space increases, as we're always increasing our space,
Your neutral zone.
my neutral zone increases with it. So now all the time I'm in this neutral zone, but it took me a while to get used to it. So Sherry tells me on a Tuesday night about the neutral zone. She says me going into it and everything like this is new to me. Like, okay, good, I'm glad you went first. So she could explain it to me. So some things I go first, some things she goes first. So I was glad she was explaining it to me, so I'm like, okay, I'm going. Well, the next day I felt awful, awful, awful. And because I had all these parts that were extremely engaged with Timothy in these parts called themselves cellular parts because they were down like the cellular level and they looked like they had these little plugs on them. I mean, this is like under a microscope that you see this. And they had these little things that were attached to him. So for me to be in the neutral zone, all this had to be unplugged suddenly. But I went ahead, I was obeying God, and I wanted to respond to God. Got my neutral zone. These parts were like freaking out. And so I was in bed most of the day. I was just like knocked out. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna just stay here. Just go with God. We're not afraid of the awful, right? Excuse me, we're not afraid of the awful. And so it felt awful, but I knew God was doing something. So what happened is all these parts started cropping up that said, oh no. And I think because you're an includer, you have parts like that too that get very attached to people. My number one is relator. So my number one strength is relator and strength finders. So one of my themes in me is that I got too entangled with people. I get too attached to them like this. Like if I could just meet someone, we connect on anything, just like I was like this. Instead of going slow, now I've learned to go slow and have the borders and know what those friendship circles. Sherry's helped me a lot because she'll see me start to do it, and she told me. So I don't do that anymore, but these parts were still in that. And so they were very attached. So when I went to my neutral zone, there's no place for this kind of weird attachment anymore, which is freaking awesome. So now that it's to the border, I can have all these relationships with people, but not have all this any weirdness.
Yeah, and a lot of what God did for you in your neutral zone was disentangle you.
Right. Yeah.
That was inside, you were inside doing that, yeah.
Yeah. So he disentangled. So now, that gave what? Timothy, he's probably thanking God, saying, good, this woman's not acting crazy anymore. You know, I don't know what he's thinking, he hasn't said anything. But I see the results in him, and he actually changed in positive ways that I love that he's changed. But I was in my neutral zone. I wasn't, you've got to change. I was over here, just having a good time with God. And if he wanted to act whatever way, okay. But I think because I did, and my parts disengaged, that gave him the freedom then to be him, and then to God to go there. See how it all works? So that, that's micro, but macro, you see us all as large people, not only having our own space now, but that space being the neutral zone of God.
Right.
And in here is the peace of God, shalom, and a whole lot more that comes from Isaiah 60, which you're going to show.
Yeah, that's
So I'll let you show because you have more voice to share. Thank you.
And I wanted to, here in this part here, to tell you, Mom, that you, just even the things that we were seeing with you, will happen in here. Okay, so those things can be pulled apart. You're saying, wow, I just really don't want to be responsible today. Okay, I'm not going to do this today. Okay, you're not getting engaged with anybody out here. You just decide I don't want to be responsible today. That's a choice. Okay, you can do that for a day. And what happens is you will find parts of you in that decision of that choice that you make not to be responsible. And then God can go there. And I've had a lot of parts of me rescued in here. I know Karen has, and we haven't even been doing it that long.
Yeah.
Right. I've had a lot of teenagers. I've had, look at, I'm trying to think. A lot of my parts recently don't want to be invisible. I've been invisible. But see, mine came from here, right here, in the cover-up.
Yeah.
Because there's so much cover-up, and there's still a lot of me that's invisible. But I almost had to be. Yeah. Thank you. So, and I mean, it's to the point, and I want to say this for everybody else. This is not in my head. People actually do not see me.
Right.
Okay, I can be standing right in front of them, and they do not see me. In the physical.
Right.
And Karen has seen
I've
it.
seen it.
So she's my witness that this does happen.
Really? Yes.
Okay, so I am not crazy. This is true. This does happen. But these are parts of me here where I've had to hide so much because of what happened. Okay. So I've had a lot of these parts now coming forth, and that's why too yesterday that was part of the whole thing was she didn't see me. That's how it got started. These invisible parts going, we ain't going through this again. We're going to stand up here even if we have to be rude.
Right.
And go up and take our place because that was my place.
Right.
And I wasn't going to get pushed out of there.
Right. Amen.
So, yeah, they like that.
I like that
So
too.
say hi, everybody. They're here. Hello.
I think there was a lot of times in my life when I didn't care if anybody saw me. I didn't really want them to see me.
Exactly, and that's what happened to me, is I didn't want people to see me. That was after, as a little girl, being abused in the church and sexually abused in the church, we'll say that. Then, you know, trying to get people to see you, they don't see you, and then after a while you don't want them to see you because you feel guilty, or you feel like, oh, I can't let people see the real me because they're not gonna like the real me, or they're gonna see that I'm an awful person, or whatever, or they're gonna blame me, or it's gonna be my fault, or they're gonna try to fix me. Okay, that was another thing. Like, people are gonna try to fix me, and they don't know me. I have that inside of me of, I don't want somebody trying to fix me when they don't know me. Okay, so, but there were a lot here in this area. And Karen had some get free in here yesterday. So in the neutral zone, you're not like connected to people in a weird way or engaged with them. And it's safe here. This is a safe place.
Okay.
Okay. So after you have a trauma, see the trauma here? And the aftermath, the survival, the cover-up, and nothing happened. Then God came in with the neutral zone and put it all the way around here.
Okay.
Okay? So that we can now process all this stuff in the neutral zone. Okay, and be safe. But we're not being engaged, just like Karen was saying, the parts of her aren't engaged with the parts of Timothy. Parts of me are not engaged with the parts of you. My parts aren't engaged with David's parts.
I don't know if I've ever, like, I don't know if I've had that much. With,
This?
The trauma.
yeah, I don't know.
You haven't been abused.
Yeah.
Where you felt this probably was more of when people made fun of you and things like that because
Yeah.
you didn't know how to say things because of your disability, and so then you felt traumatized from that, but it wouldn't be the same,
Yeah, it would be.
wouldn't be the same degree.
I know of one situation that you were talking about. And some kid called Sam something,
Yeah, called you a name.
and you misunderstood what he said.
Oh, yeah.
And then that made you feel awful.
That would
Okay.
be the same.
It's not the same degree, like what it happens when you've been physically abused or
It was the
sexually abused.
misunderstanding that was made me feel awful. It wasn't.
But the
What I
other
said
thing
bad,
was,
but it wasn't. It was that I didn't understand.
but he also called you a name, which isn't, that's not fair.
Yeah, but the worst part was that I couldn't understand.
Right, that's the
What you're saying.
disability, that's
Yeah.
the trauma that comes from having the
It's
disability,
a bad situation, it's a trauma.
okay?
Okay.
And then that makes you feel awful because no matter how hard you try, right, you can't fix that.
Yeah.
Right,
No.
that was your
Yeah.
survival.
That's your trauma. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So in your neutral zone, now this is important for you, Sam. In your neutral zone
Listening.
with your NLD,
I don't wanna.
your NLD, you're not gonna have a weird connection with people outside here. You can deal with your NLD in your neutral zone.
Okay.
I feel that. I feel the difference that that's gonna make for you is that everybody's response out here, let's put a couple girls out here, okay? Like you say, well, that girl didn't respond to me, she didn't look at me, she this or that, okay?
She did.
Here, without this, you're wanting to connect here, she's not connecting back, that feels awful, okay? Put in the neutral zone, here, now you can deal with this here, and God will change these people out here, and you'll see them differently.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
If that happens.
Yeah.
You'll still wanna connect with her, but when she doesn't, you'll be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and that'll feel different to you because you're like, wow, this feels different here.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna be like a loss and devastation, it's not gonna feel like this. Because a lot of times when these people don't
Yeah.
connect with you, you feel like you're being
Exactly.
traumatized.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, but now you're in the neutral zone.
Okay.
We're just gonna, right now, just gonna see God opening up your neutral zone, saying, come on in.
And if you
He's
don't
leading
feel
you
it
in.
at first, do what I did, is to say, I'm going into my neutral zone. We don't know how to work for everybody.
Yeah.
Because, so if you don't feel it, and you feel triggered, you're like, wait a second, I'm gonna get in my neutral zone, and then you get used to it.
And then yesterday, when you were getting ready, and I was like, And I just told you, okay, I'm not gonna say any more to you. Remember me saying that? And you thought I was mad at you, but I wasn't. And so what I did was I told myself I'm staying in my
I
neutral
wasn't
zone.
sure, I didn't think you were mad.
Okay, but I'm telling myself I'm staying in my neutral zone. I'm not gonna walk out of my neutral zone. And I was already seeing my neutral zone really expanding, but here I was going all the way to the edge, all the way to the edge here, going, oh wow, I could walk out of this. I didn't want to walk out of it. So I decided not to, and I walked back to the middle.
Right. So it's a choice.
But I tell you, it feels so different because you stay calm. You don't get upset. And you are a little upset, but you stay calm. It's a different kind of calm.
It's so cool.
It's hard to explain, but
Okay, so like if I see somebody getting upset, can I say, maybe you should go to your neutral zone?
maybe you need a neutral zone. Maybe you do need a neutral zone, right?
That's what I'm gonna tell you.
Say it from within your neutral zone.
Let's go to our neutral
Get in your
zone.
phone, get in yours first, yeah.
Okay, now here's another key that we talked about, but I didn't say it like this. In here, you get to make choices. Another key for your neutral zone. Where before you maybe didn't feel like you had choice because you were connected with this person. Well, I got upset because of this or that, and so then I chose to do this or that or whatever. Or you just did it and say, well, I didn't have a choice, they made me mad, blah, blah, blah. Well, here, you're making choices actively. Isaiah 60. And originally, God gave me, starting with 19, to the end of the chapter, which is 22. But then when I was reading it yesterday, God gave me 18. And the reason why I saw it right away was because this is kind of like in your neutral zone. This is a verse for your neutral zone.
Oh, let's hear it.
So, in 18 it says, there will be no more violence in your country. So, you disengaged. Okay? No more ruin, devastation, or havoc, or destruction within your borders. The neutral zone, that's what I wrote. Within your borders, the neutral zone. You will name your walls salvation, and your gates praise. So we have salvation walls and our gates are praise and we're in the safe zone. Okay. The sun, this is a good one, this is what spoke to both of us. The sun will no longer be your light during the day. In utter darkness, I added this, in utter darkness we will not need light from any other source. Because God will be our light. Nor will the brightness from the moon be your light, because the Lord will be your light forever, your everlasting light, and your God will be your glory. You want to expand on that? What God showed you about Him being the light?
That this is the neutral zone, first of all, and in the neutral zone, there's His own light. So God's the light, so that it can be all darkness around me. People can be freaking out, circumstances. People can be mad at me, whatever is going on. Finances can be bad, whatever you want to name for darkness. It could be all darkness, but I don't have to rely on, this to get better, for me to feel better, or for me to have light. God showed me in the neutral zone, He is the light.
He is.
So we have light continually within us, no matter what's going on, no matter if it's day or night outside of us, no matter what's going on in people or circumstances, that we've got the light of God.
Yes.
And I'm good. So that's really helped me as I've been in situations. I'm like, well, this person's really in darkness right now, like they're just going through something and would normally affect me because I'm close to that person. Now, it wasn't like I didn't care, but it was like, okay, well, I've got the light of God. And so it wasn't like this, you know what it was? It wasn't that dark cloud coming over me.
Yeah.
That's cool. Because that dark cloud that you talked about can't come there. Right? Because God's the light. So those dark clouds can't come over us.
Yeah, and when you're saying that, I think about, well, I know some of that was with what was going on with you and Timothy, if he was in a bad mood or whatever. And the same thing when David's feeling awful, like he's feeling awful today, and that's why he's not in here. But I was thinking, there were times when that would happen that I would feel like, well, now I can't be happy today, or I can't be bubbly today, or I can't have energy today because of, the way he is. But now here, even more so, well, that was parts of me too, but even more so, I'm like, well, that's where he is today, and that's letting him be all of him. And then me being all of me here, well, I can still have energy, I can still do what I want to do and things like that. So that's also the light, being that light, having that light of me being able to be well in here.
Yeah, that's cool, because on his snow track, on his all of you track, he might be in the sled and the toboggan like I was.
Oh, he
But
is.
so he's in the toboggan being pulled by God,
Mhm.
that's him being him right now, but you are doing a dance, and so you don't have to,
Yeah, but I used to feel like I had to get
Oh,
a toboggan too.
Oh, I totally get it. I totally get it, because we try to fix things or we help people. The other huge thing that just happened this morning, that was new for the neutral zone, is that I heard the enemy say something to me saying, oh, shouldn't you be upset about blank, blank, blank? And I immediately said, oh, I'm in my neutral zone. And the enemy could not go any further with that.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, the rest of that is your sun will never set again and your moon will never be dark because there's constant light. Okay. Because the Lord your God, because the Lord will be your light forever,
Yahweh.
your everlasting light, and your time of sadness will end. All of your people will do what is right, be righteous. They will receive, possess, inherit the earth forever. I saw that as like all the group of us and all people in their neutral zone.
New King James says, they shall inherit the land forever.
Yes.
And when I read that,
Wow.
when I read that, just like yesterday or something, I saw my land, I saw the neutral zone expand to my borders of my land. Because I was like, okay, I'm inheriting my whole land.
Yes.
That's what it meant to me.
Mm-hmm. And then you have all these people that have inherited their whole land in their neutral zone. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
An army full too, and a world full.
Yeah.
Okay, that means us, we're plants, branches, shoots that God has planted, the work of his own hands to show his greatness, his glory, and his manifest presence. Yes, Samuel.
This version says to beautify myself.
Oh, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
The smallest family will grow, meaning the least of you will become 1,000. Well, there's that 1,000. The least important, smallest of you will become a powerful nation, and I am the Lord, and when it is in its time, I will make these things happen quickly.
Yes,
I
amen.
want to read you this version.
Okay.
A little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, Yahweh, will hasten it in its time.
Yeah.
There's that 1,000. Wow.
I know. I thought of parts, the little ones.
That's what I thought of when I
I want to change that to the smallest will become a millennium. Okay. I also wrote down Psalm 61:3 because it was the next chapter over, and I was like, wow, this is what you were talking about, the strong tower. For thou hast been a shelter for me, a strong tower from my enemy.
Oh, yeah.
It's a strong tower. I just wanted to, in the millennium, tell you what I wrote down here for that definition is, in the dictionary, I think it was dictionary.com, the millennium said a period of general righteousness and happiness, especially in the indefinite future. A period of general righteousness and happiness, especially in the indefinite future.
The video doesn't know what you're talking about with the millennium.
I'll tell you later. God intended for everyone to have the neutral zone, but with all, what did you say, with all the, everything that has happened and in the world, right, and in people, it has been eaten away.
So nobody has it.
So nobody has it
This
anymore.
was This was his initial intention.
Right.
You said that God said that. So I was
Yeah, he
just
did.
reminding
He
you.
did. God did say that. Yeah.
You.
Yes.
So that's why I was going to.
Yeah, I was trying to bring it back to my memory here. So, and you can see that because if people are constantly at each other, you know, because of sin or whatever, that you really don't know, or you can't have a neutral zone. There is no, you're always fighting for yourself. You're trying to fight for survival. So your neutral zone would disappear. Yeah. Well, you can see that with all of this. Look what's all in here, is that would eat away. Especially if your parts don't get rescued. I mean,
But, yeah, you have to fix everything. You think you have to fix it all. One of the cool things too is the word zone. I looked at the word zone the other day.
Mhm.
I encourage everyone to look that up. It talks a lot about having specific borders. Specific borders.
oh, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, so that this zone, the edges of it are specific and defined. That's what it kept on saying, a zone is specific and defined.
And you may see, like Karen saw hers as the tower. I saw mine like this. You might see yours differently. I think it can be whatever.
However, yeah. Moving forward, what I see with the neutral zone is so important. So this is us. Okay, so this is all J2A, but we're all huge individuals in it, right? So as we go, either as a group or to different people, God's got us going to all these different people right now, right? Well, we all need to be in our neutral zone. Because, be in there, because you guys have been experiencing the same thing. That everybody in the world has parts. So we're not encountering one person that goes, oh yeah, I get this and everything's good. So what we do is, we gotta be in this neutral zone, in our land, in our neutral zone, because we're encountering real people with parts. And they've got issues. Or there's gonna be organizations, like a church or a ministry or something. We can't let what some kind of weirdness that's coming from them, just because it's coming from their parts, then affect us, and that we get all this weird engagement like that. Does that make sense? So in order for us to go forward, we all need to be in our neutral zones, just for our daily lives, yeah, but to go forward as the J2A, because then this weirdness is not gonna happen, okay? We're gonna be separated from, and I'm not saying that people are weird, I'm just saying, because there are parts of them that are gonna have issues. I don't care if it's a ministry leader or whatever. The reason this came up to me is I've been in contact with someone that I know, different ministry leaders, and I'm like, wow, I'm already seeing their parts. But if I weren't in my neutral zone, that would make me go, not dealing with that, not gonna get involved with this person's ministry, or not gonna be connected with them because I don't wanna deal with that. But in my neutral zone, it's been this wonderful, glorious border place that God's in there, the glory of God in me. God's made his home in here, right? So we were talking last time about the sanctuary, God looking for a place to make his home. He's in here making his home with us in the neutral zone. He likes it too. But we're here, so now I'm perfectly free to go and engage and discuss and talk to and maybe work alongside for at some point somebody else or some organization. And it's not going to wreck me. Does that make sense? So going forward, because this is God's protection. Over, so I'm talking about going forward, that we're not going to have to, we can deal with people and organizations because they have parts. Remember I told you that? I was talking about everybody being in their neutral zone. It's important to go forward because then as we encounter every person who has parts or organizations or ministries,
Yes,
that's not going to throw us off.
that's right.
We're going to be able to stay there. And then God also told you, Sherry, that God himself is in his neutral zone.
Yes.
God himself has a neutral zone and he stays in it. And I thought, oh wow, that's how he can deal with all of us messed up people. And not go crazy. Or not go so for the wrath, destroy everybody.
Never thought about that, yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, because I'm like, how do you deal with this? This is ridiculous. He's in his neutral zone. So he can see it. He's not blind to it, but he can also say, okay, this is what I'm going to do about it. But he himself is not affected by it.
Yeah, because anytime I was thinking, oh God, how do you deal with all this killing?
Right.
I mean, all the time, people shooting each other, killing each other,
Yeah.
doing, you know.
Don't wipe us out.
Why wouldn't he destroy everyone? That's because he's been in his neutral zone. And like I said, Sherry, God comes and makes his home with us. God's here.
Yes.
No, I told you
And then he's
that.
got his neutral zone. So you got double.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
New parts of me now, they come forth into the neutral zone. And so parts of me were coming forth and they came right up into my land, which is me. But they came forth and they were already in the neutral zone because the neutral zone causes everything. So I think there's going to be another phase of revolution because then it was so much easier for my parts to come up into the neutral zone where everything's calm. And I'm not engaged with people and all that stuff. So these parts, then I called to more parts of me saying, come on up now, because they're coming into an even more safe place and more place with God filling up me and God. And so that was cool.
We thank you, God, for, wow, this has been a month long of pioneering to bring this aftermath and neutral zone into being, God, because you said that we bring the things that you want us to life, and this is bringing it to life so that it can be reestablished here on this earth. So we thank you, God, for giving us understanding, that you'll continue to give us more understanding about the aftermath and about the neutral zone, and for each person to understand that individually so they can understand between you and them, God, where they are, what their neutral zone looks like, and how to continue to move forward, God. And that you're bringing us all into understanding more and more of where you have us, and for all the parts of us to continue to rescue all the parts of us, God, in the aftermath and everything that follows, and in the neutral zone, God. We thank you, God, for this truth. We thank you for wisdom, God, that you give us. We thank you for your peace. And we do proclaim peace now for all of us and for those watching. In Jesus' name, amen.